welcome to my podcast, Spiritual Quest, with me, your host, Vibeke Garnos, always guided by Spirit. I am very excited to share my gift with you and empower you to embrace your gift. So if you define yourself as a spiritual human being, then you've come to the right place. So prepare yourself now for an amazing journey where your soul will lead the way. Hi there, and welcome to another heart-centered episode of the Spiritual Quest podcast. In my experience, the human journey can feel like a roller coaster ride with its ups and downs, and it's easy to get distracted and lose sight of what we're here to create. Too often, we get stuck in old emotions, limiting beliefs, which keeps us repeating outdated patterns, and we find ourselves living in the past. So where there is energy, there is life. So how can we move beyond our limitations and reawaken to our innate power? Well, I've invited the transformational leader and founder of the Radiant Rebellion, Leandra Rose, to explore this topic with me. Leandra has devoted 20 years to studying human development and potential. She specializes in empowering cycle-breaking visionaries to release their fears, limiting beliefs, and imprints that are blocking them from becoming the leaders and change makers they desire to be. Her extensive background in psychology and somatic experiencing and mindfulness helps her create a unique, empowering, and safe space for her clients to unlock their soul's purpose. She says that each of us holds a golden thread of the new paradigm. But some people are stuck believing they don't matter. They're stuck in old ways of thinking, old ways of being. And her mission is to empower them to live their bigger purpose so that we can weave the new paradigm together. And that is my intention for this episode. That together, we will let go of the 3D way of living and start living with love, grace, and gratitude for the life we've chosen and to create what our hearts and souls desire. I'm excited to introduce the Radiant Rebellion, Leandra Rose. Welcome to the Spiritual Quest podcast, Leandra.
Hi, Vibeke. Thank you for having me. What a beautiful intro. And it just feels like we're in such alignment with what we're bringing forward together. So I'm excited about our conversation today.
Thank you. And I must admit, when I found you, and the fun part of this is that I always ask the guidance of spirit. So I was looking for new soul connections. I like to look at it that way when I reach out to new people. Soul connections that I could resonate with, and I could dive deep into these spiritual questions, if you wish, of how to reawaken and how to follow your soul. And I was just flipping like we do, right, on Instagram. And there you were. And I was like, okay, my intention was to find a soul connection. And you showed up. And I started to read about you. And I was like, oh, I need to speak to this woman. So I'm so excited for you to share a little bit about how you ended up being a Purpose Doula. And what is that?
Yeah. So as I often talk about our golden thread, I mean, we're in a place in human development, in our development of consciousness, where we can actually grab that golden thread, and we're looking for it. People are looking for what's my purpose. And the reason we're looking for what's my purpose is because we've done so much evolving as humans. We've grown so much that we're at a place where we're no longer having to focus on where's our next meal going to come from. And we can use this life force energy to bring our gifts forward. And so we're all looking for this golden thread. What's my purpose? What's my purpose? And often we find it by looking backwards, like, oh, the golden thread was always with me. It was with me when even in the most difficult times of my life. And actually, maybe even those difficult times of my life were part of me growing or accessing this golden thread. And then eventually we start looking back and going, oh, okay, this is what it is. This is with me. So when I tell my story, it's not that I always knew what my golden thread of creation was. It's that now looking back, I can see the through line. And so I had this idea since I was really young. I grew up in what could be described as an underprivileged environment. And I say it could be described that way because it could also be described in lots of ways. There was a lot of richness there and beauty and learning and lessons. And there was a lot of stories of limitation. I'm the granddaughter of Mexican migrant workers who my grandparents grew up with no running water, no electricity, came to the United States, worked so hard to give their family life, a good life here in the United States. And with that came a lot of stories of limitation, like money is really hard. People like us don't have access to big money. People like us don't go to college. People like us don't, all these things. And around me and in my family and around me in the community that I grew up in, there were just a lot of these limiting beliefs and people expressing it through hardship and through addiction and alcoholism. And there was a lot of that around me. And I thought, something about this just doesn't make sense. Why would God send us here and some of us have access to riches and wealth and freedom and play and adventure and some of us don't? I don't understand this. And when I was a child, so I was looking at this and looking at like, I know that we have this spark, like I could see it inside of all of us. We all have this spark, but what happens? And I had peers that I grew up with and people close to me that were my age. And I have someone in particular who was very close to me who we, he was so brilliant. We both were. We were brilliant, bright kids, creative, happy, all the things that children are. And we both got tested for giftedness when we were around like 6, 7 years old. Turns out,
I'm sorry, would you describe what giftedness is for those who maybe are in Europe that don't know?
yeah, so because we were high performing students in school, they wanted to know what our IQ level was. And if you had a certain IQ level, it qualified you to have special classes. You could go to special classes and special events for those kids who were gifted or had high IQs. So they tested us, and it turns out according to the test, I'm a few points below genius level. So I'm not a genius according to the test. Okay, whatever. But my peer was. And I just was like enamored with him. I was like, he is a genius. He's so smart. He's going to go places. This is amazing. And I thought, well, I have to work really hard because he's a genius and I'm not. But either way, we were very close up until we became preteens and teenagers. And we had similar upbringings. Like I said, there was poverty and abuse and alcoholism and things in both our families. And his journey started to diverge from mine right around preteen, teen age. And he started getting in trouble in school. And long story short, I finished high school with honors and he didn't finish school. And he ended up going to prison and I ended up going to college. And I wanted to know what happened. Where did the split happen? Because how could these two brilliant souls and one who's legitimately a genius, how did our stories diverge so much? And his wasn't the only story. There were other people that I saw when we were children. They were creative, they were musicians, they were artists, they were excited about life. And then we got older and suddenly it was like, no, the only menu of options for people like us is get really good at a trade or manual labor and hope that you make a good enough life to feed your family and be grateful for that. That was the menu of options that we had. And so I decided to go to school, to go to college and study psychology and behavioral sciences. I wanted to understand how we develop as humans that can create this kind of split. And then I also decided I'm going to be with all this wisdom that I have, I'm going to be a kindergarten teacher. And I'm going to go into the classroom and make sure that the children in my classroom are always connected to this spark, to this golden thread. I want to teach them how to hold on to that and how to know who they are and what their gifts are so that they don't have to find it later on in life. Turns out, in the kindergarten classroom, what I learned was that really the institution of school, the way that it's designed, even the most well meaning teachers can't do much about the way that the institution is designed, and it's just not designed to support the genius of each child.
Oh, I
And
love that.
so,
I'm
yeah,
sorry. I love the way you said that. Yeah, that really resonates. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, especially these new children. As I was a teacher for 15 years, and I saw over the years these rebels coming into my classroom who I very much resonated with because I'm a rebel and I question everything, and I didn't agree with all these stories either. And so I had these children later in my teaching career coming up and saying, like, we do not want to be educated like this. And I started to become a bigger and bigger mismatch for the institution because I couldn't in good conscience put these kids in that box, especially these kids, especially the ones that were coming in with this, like, knowing, like, I am not going to be conditioned, I'm not going to be controlled. And it was like just a mismatch for them, for me, and I couldn't be one of those teachers to hold them down. And so I ended up leaving teaching about 6.5 years ago and decided to use the gifts that I have, the knowledge that I have, to help visionaries reconnect with that visionary spirit, reconnect with their golden thread, their trust in themselves, and bring their gifts forward. So I work with a lot of women who are on their journey to bringing their soul work forward through soulpreneurship and service and leadership, and helping them to dismantle the things in the way of that.
Wow, what an incredible story. I mean, going from being a teacher to, to releasing that or saying that I've outgrown it. What I'm hearing you say is that your personal journey, it was the time was right, if you wish, for both the institution and you to move to a next level. And so, how would that go about you finding your mission? Did you know in that moment when you were with the with your who was, how do you say that in English, um, your principal, I guess, your employer,
Mhm.
how did you know that this is time for me to leave and what is my mission moving forward?
Yeah, so in that time, I knew that eventually I was going to outgrow teaching. I could see it coming. So I was studying different healing modalities. I knew that I'm a healer, I'm a teacher, I'm a facilitator. And so I was studying different healing modalities and breath work, and I became certified in mindfulness meditation, and I was learning all these things and piecing them together. Okay, now how am I going to turn this into a business so that I can monetize it and replace my teaching income and leave teaching? So I had this brilliant business plan. I came up with it one spring break. I was on spring break and I came up with this business plan, and it was a 3-year plan. And I knew exactly how many workshops I needed to teach and how many clients I needed to have and how I was going to fit that into my teaching schedule and all this. How I'm going to do it was a beautiful three-year plan. I come back to school after spring break and I get called into my principal's office. And I was so surreal because I had my 3-year plan and I had been a beloved teacher for 15 years. And here this woman is telling me, you're not a good teacher. You need to go back to school to learn how to manage your classroom, and you need to learn these things, and I need you to sign this document that says that you understand that your employment is determined by you completing these tasks and that you will learn how to be a better teacher. And I was in tears, like, what do you mean I'm not a good teacher? I feel like I've just done my best by these children. My heart is in it, but what is this? And so I left her office, and at first I was indignant. I was angry. I'm like, I'm going to fight this. I'm going to go to HR and I'm going to prove my case because I have a 3-year plan. She cannot fire me right now. I have a 3-year plan. But thankfully, there was a really long corridor between her office and my car, and I went through all these emotions. Probably, if I look back, all the emotions of grief and loss that you go through, the denial, the indignation, the anger, the acceptance. And by the time I got to my car, I was grateful. And I
Wow.
turned back towards her office. I literally took a bow and I said, "Thank you for showing me where I no longer belong." And I'm going to give her my resignation. And my 3-year plan is now a 6-week plan. I better figure this out quick.
Yes.
And that's how I left teaching.
Wow. You know what? I must admit that when you're sharing that story, I'm reflecting on my personal story as well. I mean, I remember when I quit my job after 13 years. I've been working in the family company for a long time, and I remember promising both my parents and myself that I would never ever work for them. But then, of course, things happened in the family, and my mother got sick, and they called me. I was living in another city, and I ended up and I said, okay, I'm going to come home and I'm going to work for 1 year, only 1 year, because I've started my own career, if you wish, within the travel industry. And so I went back home and I moved into my parents' house and I started to work there. And 1 year turned into 13. I was like, what happened? And and that's I went through similar, like trying to discover what is my purpose, what is my what do I want to do, what are my gifts, because growing up and having Zarius and knowing about the spiritual realm, which was my reality but wasn't my family's reality, I thought, and hearing you're kind of weird, you don't think of that as something that you can live from or create a career by, right? And so I remember going through a lot of emotions, and the company was sold because neither my brother or I would take over the company, which of course broke my father's heart in that moment. But I was so set on that is not my path. I'm sorry, but I have to follow my path. And so I remember I was just giving birth to my second daughter. So I went out on maternity leave. And when I got back, the company had been sold, and I come back and they had completely stripped my position. And it was just, and my office was gone. And everything was like, I was back sitting where I sat for that first year doing, that work that I did the first year when I was there. And I just said, what is this? And I go, there must be a reason for this. And that's when I kind of opened myself up to the guidance of spirit and Zaris. And I said, please, please, I was desperate, of course, please help me. Please help me see clearly what is the meaning of what's, unfolding here. Let me follow my heart. And I found that spark inside again. Like I didn't know what it would bring me, but I just knew that stand up for yourself. And to be honest, these people that was now taking over, that was running the company, were all men. I just have to notice that. So they were all men. I'm not saying blaming all men out there, but I'm saying there were men and there were men. And so when I walked in there, there was four men sitting there. And I remember, and I said, okay, took a deep breath and I just laid it out there. I just shared, I feel that you don't want me here. And I just laid out all my feelings. And you know, really deep emotional feelings of how I felt coming back, and they're stripping me of everything that I've done for 13 years, like I had no value. And it was just, so I felt like they wanted me out of there. And I said it, you want me to leave, but I'll give you, that's okay, because you don't have to fire me or try to fire me, because they couldn't fire me. I had a job there and I've done a good job for 13 years. But I said, but I'm leaving today and I'm not coming back. That was on a Friday. And I just worked 1 week after coming back from maternity leave. And I remember walking out to everyone in the office and I said, I'm sorry, thank you and goodbye. And they were like, what? After 13 years, I just got back. And I remember walking, kind of going through all the emotions and being angry and all that. And I walked downstairs and I walked out the door and I closed the door and something came over me. Kind of the same thing that you described. I was like, oh my God, I'm free. It's like, I'm euphoria. I mean, it was such a high. And I was like, oh, I'm so grateful. And I started to cry. I started to cry. I was like, I'm free. I'm free. And that feeling, I don't think I've felt that feeling since that time because that was the shift, the transformation of how I looked at myself as somebody being stuck and somebody with potential that could live and prosper and follow my heart and soul and discover what was my gifts and start to embracing that. I felt so incredible. And I just had my second child, and it was just such an amazing feeling. I just wanted to share that story with you, Leandra, because I think many of us that's been on this spiritual path, we look for the signs before, or we want a sign like go this way or do that, and that it will bring us the knowledge before we've jumped or leaped into faith, if you were showing faith. So how did you go from when you said thank you and you went from that, from the school, got in your car, then what happened? How did you create what you created? How did you start out?
So, yes, speaking of leaps of faith, so I left teaching and I had a boyfriend at the time who I lived with, and I shared with him, okay, I'm leaving teaching. I don't obviously have a viable business yet because I had a 3-year plan, And he said, you know what, that's okay. I'll help you. I'll support you while you go through this. And that felt really good to my ego, like, oh, my fearful parts, like, oh, okay, I have someone who's gonna help me, who's gonna take care of me. And then spirit said, that's not the way. That's
Oh,
not the This is not the partnership for you. And spirit guided me to leave the relationship that I had been in at the same time that I was leaving teaching. So, like, change my whole life. Wait, no, I can't. No, I can't leave teaching and leave this support system. And it was just this really strong nudge. And it was very much like when you said taking a leap, that was really the leap, was like, I really get to release this codependence, is really what it was, and go out on my own. And I have no idea how this is going to work because I don't have clients yet. And so I left him, and we had been living together. And I'm like, where am I going to live? I
mhm.
don't even know where I'm going to live. Somehow, in my network of people, there was someone who had a Malibu beach home that was empty. And I asked her, I just left my boyfriend. I don't know where I'm going to live. Can I stay at your place for a couple of weeks while I figure out what my next move is? And she's like, absolutely. The house is empty. We'd love to have you there. Just go be there. So a couple of weeks turned into 6 months. This family gifted me this home. And what I wanted in that time, what my ego wanted in those 6 months, was to start making money right away. But what spirit wanted for me, and why I was gifted that space, was to really detox from the hustle, from how I made money before as an employee, and to lean into this other kind of trust, this other kind of creation of wealth that was so different from my life before. And those 6 months of being held in this incredibly luxurious, like, Malibu multi-million dollar beach house, on this beach, being supported by the ocean, and the way that the sun rose and set on that property, and the way that I got to be with with that, with the ocean and with the cycles of nature and the sunrise and the sunset for 6 months. It wasn't so much about, okay, this is go time, here's your business plan. It was really a time of detoxing and releasing and releasing and learning to trust and learning to surrender. I got sent on a few missions by spirit to travel, which was also crazy in my mind. Like, what do you mean I'm supposed to just go to Italy all of a sudden? I don't have any money. I don't have clients coming in. I had a little bit. I had workshops. I had a little bit, but not enough to like travel the world in my mind. But there were all these things that spirit was leading me to, and it was a real time of learning to listen and follow and trust. And I would follow these nudges and be massively supported, and gifts would come in, support would come in, people would come in, money would come in ways that I didn't expect. And that was that 6 months that I got to be there. That journey was really about that.
Wow, I love the way you describe that, the allowance part of it, that you surrendered and you just allowed. You allowed the guidance of spirit. You just surrendered to it. And once again, I'm reflecting that our stories are so similar. They're different, but we have these points, these touch points. And I remember I got I when I quit my job, it was not a very good time for, I just got my second child, and my husband had just lost his job. They were, I don't know how you say it in English, but refiguring out, how the organization would work, and he was one of the last ones in, so we had to go. And so I remember, and we just had bought our new apartment, and it was an expensive apartment. And here I come home, and I said, well, I quit my job. 13 years, and I quit it so you're not receiving any benefits from the state here in Norway if you quit your job. But I couldn't depend on that. I had to be free. I just knew that I had to do this for me. I had to be free. And I felt like maybe I'm the one who needs to kind of tear the bandage off. Is that what you call it? Like just rip it off and be in the pain if you wish. Just stand there and use your power, because that's when I get active. It's like something reacts in me, not fight and flee. It's like, okay, you need now to step up. You need to be there for yourself. You need to trust yourself. You can do this. It's sort of like something that happens within me. And so I got home and I was like, quit my job, and we don't have any income coming in, and we have two children. And I said, well, and we have this platform in Norway where you go in to look for jobs. I'm sure you have it in the state as well. It's called Finn. And I hadn't been in there at all, because even though I've been thinking about leaving my job, I wasn't there where I thought, okay, so I want to look for another job. But I knew I had to, as a transitional period, I needed to get a job. And I was like, I asked Sarah, I said, please, I remember in the car drive home, please help me. I surrender. I've done this. I'm so ready. Please now just guide me in the right direction. And I sit down at the laptop on a Friday, and I flip it up, and the first thing I see, like, hello, the first thing I see on the screen is the perfect job description for me. It was written, it was my name all over it. It was the first thing I saw. And the application date was that Friday. That's the last day you could apply for the job. And it was a management position for a travel agency in my town. Hello. I was like, I can take on this job. I've been working like for 13 years as a sales manager for a transport company, but then I have my background in travel agency and all that. And so I said to my husband, and I knew it. There was this knowingness, because with the guidance, that job is mine. It's written all over. And I told my husband, that job is mine. I know I'm going to be in that job within a short period of time. And I applied, and on Monday, they called me. So this was on Friday, and I sent it in that evening. And I got a call on Monday asking to be interviewed. And it was a long interview process because it was a management position. But 14 days after I quit my job, I was in that new job. And I said, if that is not trusting the guidance of spirit. But the thing is, I did it before knowing that this was waiting for me, that I would be taken care of. I jumped. I did what was right for me. And I trusted in that. And that is the greatest self love that you can give yourself. And with that, the manifestation of me and that self love and what I wanted and needed and all those needs and the human aspect of being, a soul on a human journey was taken care of. It just unfolded. And so I think that's maybe a point that, even though I don't know about you, Leandra, but for me, I had a lot of fear coming into that. Also, that's why it took such a time, and it took something like this to happen, like coming back to work and not having my position there anymore. It really needed to push my buttons, if you wish, somehow, because I wouldn't have done it otherwise. I would have brought, I know myself, I would have used a long time. So what about you? How did you get to know yourself even better going through this? Did you find
Hmm.
any new strength, new gifts that you now use or you're aware of?
Yeah, well, similarly, there's fear, and there still is fear. That's what I also try to help people understand, because we want to get to some place where there's never fear, there's never discomfort, and the truth is, there is. This is just part of being in these human experiences, but once you start to learn how to follow your guidance and trust yourself, you move through the fear. You go, "Ah, there you are, fear. I've seen you before, and you're not driving the bus anymore. So you just take a little back seat. I see you, I hear you, and we're still going to go this way because I know where my guidance is taking me." And yeah, it's scary every time to the human mind or to the ego or to the fear mind, because we're leaping into the unknown, and our ego mind does not love to leap into the unknown, because we want to know what's coming, we want to have control, we want to know that everything is going to work out, but we want to know, how is it going to work out? Yeah, I know the heart says trust and it's things are going to work out, but no, I want to know how. Right? That's the mind says. And
Yes.
the heart is like, no, it's cool, it's going to work, it's cool, let's just do this, so it's learning how to follow that excitement and that trust without having a plan, without knowing exactly what's going to happen. And yeah, and being able to follow that. And the more you do that, and the more you get caught. And the thing is, when you take those leaps, you get caught by miracles and support that your mind could never have imagined, never could have planned that. And so that's sort of how I've done it and learned to grow that muscle. And okay, here's the fear, and let's take the leap and just trust that there's some kind of miracle lesson learning on the other side.
Yeah, it's like the human experience is the duality, the experience of living both in the light and in darkness, if you wish, to figure you out, your strength, that you can actually carry your light into darkness, that is your strength. And the light shines no matter what. It's how you, I guess, perceive it, through which vibration or frequency that you resonate on in that moment. So how did you, growing up, did you know that you were spiritual? Was that
Hmm.
something you were aware of, or was that something you discovered?
Again, looking back, yes, looking back, it was always there. I grew up, there was spirituality around me. So I am grateful for that. My family was religious, Christian, but also there was an element of spirituality. My grandmother, in particular, on my mom's side, she grew up very close to the earth and just had this incredible connection to earth and to spirit in that way. And so, getting to be with her and learn from her, I developed this connection to nature as well. And that was my access point to spirit, was through nature, was through listening to how the trees grow and how the plants grow. And even when you were just talking about darkness, one of the things that has always guided me was that seeds need darkness in order to germinate. So the darkness can't be all that bad, right? If that's where the seeds go to access their new potential or their full potential, then the darkness that I'm in must be serving the same purpose. So how do we, trust that? And so through my connection with nature, through my grandmother, um, i've I've developed this sense of spirituality that's very nature based. And also, I have a connection to angels. Looking back, now I can see that when I was a child, I had a pretty open channel.
Mm,
I had spirits visited me. As a child, it was a bit scary. I didn't have anybody to tell me what to do with all of that. And in the religious conditioning that I grew up in, there was a lot of fear around the spirits. And so I didn't know what to do with it, but I did have what I now recognize as guardian angels that I intuitively knew how to call on. And I would call on them and I would ask them to surround my bed and surround my house. And I would place them at every doorway and every window. And I would just protect this house and protect myself from any spirits that were not that they weren't benevolent spirits, but spirits that were trying to get something from me.
mm.
There were these spirits that would come to me as a child that were trying to get something from me, and I'm like, I'm a child. I don't know what you need.
Yeah.
So I'm like, no, we're closed for business. Angels, just let them find somewhere else to go. So yeah, so I had that, and then in my 20s, I didn't. My channel really opened in a way that I didn't have the ability to be with it. I At that time I was suffering from depression and anxiety in my life, and I didn't have a lot of positivity in my life. And so when your channel opens and you don't have a lot of
Mm,
positivity in your life, well, what your channel ends up attracting is a lot of negativity. And so I didn't know what to do with that. It was really intense. And so I just asked God, I don't know what this is. I don't want it. Close it. And it closed.
mm.
And
Oh,
I went through, yep. So I went through my own journey and over my 20s and the personal development that I did. Now on the other side, I'm 40 now. On the other side, I'm able to open my channel and be more in control of it. Like I know how to open it. I have boundaries, spiritual, emotional, energetic, physical
yes,
boundaries
yes,
that I
yes.
didn't know when I was in my 20s. I didn't even know the word boundaries. I didn't even know what that was. No one around me had ever spoken of boundaries. So it was learning how to have my own boundaries and be able to now access that part of me and allow my connection to spirit, and who am I willing to speak with and who am I not willing to speak with and what am I willing to speak with you about, just like I do in my personal life. I decide who I speak with, who I go on a podcast with, what kind of conversations I'm open to, right? And so in the spirit world as well, now I have more control over that. So
I'm so happy and glad that you're sharing this because I think that was maybe the greatest lesson for me as a channel, that when I was asked by Zarius to open myself to my gift and channel their messages and be like what people would call a trance medium, which I allow them in, and I kind of carry their essence and their vibration, and so they're using my vessel or my body to and my mind to facilitate or to bring their messages forward. That was pretty scary. And I thought, for me, because I didn't know anything about it, I didn't even know it was a label or a name to it. And so the only thing I knew that, okay, you want to come in. And I remember, and I asked him to practice with me. So I would sit and do my meditations. And I would, as I was deep in meditation and I cleared my channel, I cleared all my chakras, and I was kind of purified, if you wish, in my own skin. So I was pure and clean enough for them to come in, and I remember he came in and we just practiced how it felt so I could separate my energy from their energy. And so I was kind of excited when I started to feel, oh, here he comes. And then he started to introduce me to the other high frequency energies in the order, which was then Gloria, and then Grogan, and then Ikna, and then Impala, and then Inspiria, and all these energies come in. And I could I was teach or they taught me how to read and feel and sense which energies that were I was letting into the
mhm.
body. And then I got kind of, oh, this is fun. No boundaries. And I would channel, and I would channel even though intuitively I knew that I shouldn't be doing it because I wasn't in a pure space. And I would start channeling other entities. And I would notice that when people came into the room and I did a channeling session, and some of them were not in a good headspace, if you wish, and they would bring energies in, they would, come forward and they would, because I was gone. So as a trance medium, I'm closing in, I'm leaving, if you wish, the conscious mind, and they would come in and I would channel lower vibrational energies, and it would hurt my body. And I would start
Mm.
feeling like this doesn't feel good, and this, and what is this, and this is not mine. And suddenly I couldn't separate my energy anymore. So I believe I've done all the mistakes in the books. If there was a book about how to channel, which I don't think there is, because I think everyone has to figure out their gifts and figure out what resonates with them. But I think I've done everything, like from the dark to the light to the bright, just to for today to be where I'm at, also in my 40s, very secure, knowing my boundaries, knowing what energy is mine, what are others, separating, and knowing how to protect and be cautious, if you wish, when it comes to my sacred space and who I allow in. So I think, like you said, when I've been doing clearing spaces and houses for many years, and that's and with the guidance of spirit, and I know that every time I come into a space, it's, so many times I see that the energies are always connected to the people in the house. And so the lower, like when if we start talking about like really bad energies like paranormal activity, which I've only encountered a few times, it's very rare, but still it's very tough energies to deal with. It's always about the people in the house. And it's so important to understand our own sacred boundaries, the energy wise.
Mhm.
And I like when I coach people, like I said, I usually say, when people say, how do you help people cross over? And I go, well, if you had a conversation with a person sitting in front of you that you were coaching, and you wanted to lift that person and have them believe that there's, the light and it's, the power within, what would you say? Well, and I said, well, I'm saying the same thing. They're just on the other side. It's not that different. I actually communicate when I'm in a trance the way I communicate when I'm in the flow with humans. I don't know if you resonate with that, but at least that's how I figured out how to function with the energies that was mine and others.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful that you were able to discern that. And it also just makes me think what a gift it is to have sensitive humans like you on the planet, and that you've been able to maintain that sensitivity in this world. And that's something that I feel is really important, that those of us who are sensitive, that we do learn how to have boundaries so that we can be in touch with that sensitivity, because that it really is where our gifts are, when we can be so in tune with those subtle shifts of energy to know this is the right path for me,
Mm.
this is the right energy for me, this is what yes feels like in my body, this is what no feels like in my body, and to be able to hold that too, and to honor that, is so important.
Yes. It makes me think of another question for you, because I don't know how it is. I mean, you're in your 40s, so we're probably not that far apart. But how do you, how would you describe yourself prior to moving into your 40s? Because I personally had gone through a shift. Like there's a timeline. I mean, we live here now, but as a human being, there's a timeline. We do age. And with age, at least I feel I've grown wiser because I've had more experiences and I've integrated more lessons, and my perspectives and knowing who I am is more clear, and I've kind of had to go through clearing out what was not mine. And I discovered that in my 40s I had to do another round of clearing to understand, who am I? Who do I want to be? And how can I carry that my soul essence forward and protect that purity. So, have you had that experience prior and to your 40s, and now has there been a shift for you energy wise?
So I'm absolutely resonating with this. I just turned 40 6 months ago, 7 months ago. I just turned 40, and I learned entering into this transition into 40 from elder women that there is a gateway that we pass through at 40. You think, I've done so much work in my 20s and my 30s. I'm a leader, I'm a facilitator. I have worked so much with my own wounds, and I've received so much support and healing and all of this. And then I turn 40, and all of a sudden my body's like, okay, we have the biggest stuff ever that you have not even seen before. So you're ready now for the real work. And I'm like, holy, what? I thought all those layers that I dealt with in my 20s and my 30s were nothing compared to what I have had the opportunity to clear now. And it's because of the work and the foundation that I have created in my 20s and my 30s that now going into this transition into 40, that I have been able to face some of the deepest, most challenging wounds that this soul came into this body to be with. And it's been an incredible year. It's been challenging. I feel really grateful for the elder women in my life who have said, like, yeah, you're right on time. That's exactly how it's supposed to go. Keep going. You got this. And I'm like, this is really painful. This is really scary,
Mm.
or this is really hard. And they're like, yeah, exactly. You're going to move through this. You got this. And you're going to come out on the other side with more knowing who you are, but more maturity that is being called of you now in this next phase of your life. There's a new kind of maturity that requires us to go through and just really transmute that deepest stuff so that we can be that channel, or so that we can be those leaders that can guide others.
Mm. I love what you're saying. I mean, I resonate so much with what you're saying because when I turned 40, which I am further away from you, I'm actually 7 years older than you. So hello. But yeah, I keep telling myself I'm 40. I don't know why, but I'm still 40. I'm in my 40s. But the experience of turning 40 and going through what I had to go through, like I thought, now I'm grown, I make my decisions, I know who I am, and I didn't have a clue until I turned 40. And I everything, or not everything, but there was nuances, I think you would call it in English, nuances to what I've previously dealt with, that suddenly that the deep rooted stuff just there you go, this is what you need to deal with. I was like, well, haven't I dealt with that? I thought I dealt with that. It's like, no, not in this perspective. So, this is what you need to do. And I think I spent like a whole, what was it? I actually, this is, how do I say this? I had, I had perfect, created a work life, if you wish, for myself that I thought um, was the right way for me to do my work as a spiritual coach and doing the channeling. And I've created this wonderful group of people. We traveled the world together. I channeled for them, and I've been working for them or with them for like 7 years. And suddenly, Zarius was very much present, and I wasn't satisfied anymore, and I couldn't understand why, because I've been working on creating this, and here I had created um, part of my dream. I'm saying part of my dream, but in that moment I thought, well, I created my dream, and that was just one step of it. I've been so focused on doing that and manifesting that, and when I was there and I've manifested and I've had all these experiences, you're supposed to grow, you're supposed to evolve, you're supposed to open up for more, and I just didn't understand how. Being a spiritual coach, I know the techniques, but for me, it was like I've seen clearly where my life was taking me. Like I've seen, had visions of my life since I was a child. I knew what was going to unfold. I've seen it as visions, and everything was just blocked, and I couldn't see, and I didn't understand. And so I actually, Zarya said to me that you need to, funny, go on a reality show. Yes, Spirit told me to go on a reality show. Believe it or not, they did. And so I applied for a reality show with a after speaking to my husband and my children, of course. And it was living on a farm and just living off the land 100 years back in time. So no electricity, nothing. It was stripping you off everything. And I didn't understand why. But I understand I needed to go, that I wanted to go, and there was something that was going to unfold for me going. And so I actually got all the people that I work with, they supported me. And so I said, okay, I'm going, doing this. And I applied. And of course, there's a lot of people who apply for reality shows. So there was thousands of people. But I knew because spirits told me that this is okay, you're getting on the show. And so I did. I got on the show, and I knew I was going to stay away for a long time. People would, have to go into what you call like a battle, that you had to compete with each other, like on different fun stuff, like um, farming stuff, and people would be sent home like every week. But I knew that no, I'm not going home. They're keeping me there for quite a bit. And I was afraid, not afraid, but I did not want to be on one of those, something they have to do on the show. And I was one of two that never had to go out to one of these cabins that I was spared from. Spirit spared me from that. And I was there all the way to the end, to the final week. And so I didn't get to see my family. So I was away for 3 months, and I lived in tune with nature. I ate organically. No, I mean, it was all pure. Of course, there was a lot of drama because they do put people together, people who do not believe in stuff like people like me, and we had to get along, and we had to work together to get money to buy for some food and on the market and all that. And it was such a profound experience because I was stripped of all electricity. We had no phones. We couldn't speak with our families. We couldn't speak. There was nothing. It was just living on the farm with the cows, with the horses, with the goats, the sheep. No running water, no showers, nothing. It was just here. This is the human experience, like bare feet. And it was just such a purifying experience for me to coming back to who I'm truly am. Like nothing, none of that having to deal with other people, being a mother, all the roles we had to play. And so when I got home, I was, of course, drained. I was tired because it was a lot of hard work. We worked from early to actually survive in those times. It wasn't easy, but the experience and me having to get to know myself again, it was such I have hard words, but if you would have asked me, because I was asked by media when I come home what he'd done with me, and I said I think it's too early to ask because I was then turned 40, and I was in my 40s, and it was just so hard um,
Mm.
because I was so tired, and I had no uh, energy to keep up my walls, if you wish, like to keep up the facade or keep up what I previously had been doing. I was just, that's not me anymore. I can't do that. And I actually had to take like half a year off just to
Mm.
figure out how do I build my energy back up
Mm.
the way not need, because that's the wrong word, but looking for the English word, um, in a good way that would carry me forward, that would actually allow me to do what I'm doing today.
Mm.
So I knew that I just had to relax. And that's when Zaria said, start Spiritual Quest podcast. So I did my first season when I've been off for quite a bit, like a couple of months after coming home. And then I started working on Spiritual Quest season one. And that was kind of the transformational period for me. So I don't know why I shared all that, but I just, like I said, when you meet soul to soul, it's just beautiful to be able to share those life transforming moments because you never know when they're going to show up. But if you listen and allow and trust, it's like Zari says, you have to accept, you have to trust, and you have to allow. You do that, everything would unfold. So, well, I could speak with you forever, to be honest. But before we leave today, and not only that, I'm thinking I would love to have you on another time, if you would, to discuss the 40s, to make an episode on women and the 40s, because I think, going through this, I know how difficult and what I've been dealing with. And maybe together, we could share some light on that.
I love that idea. I don't know if I'm an expert yet. I'm just in my first year, but definitely in it. Yeah, I'd
That's what I
love
love
to
about it because I've
share.
kind of transitioned forward and you're in it. And it's just, I think that would be a lovely conversation, but for another time. So before we
Yes.
leave, do you have any tips for our listeners when it
Mm.
comes to breaking free and from fear or limiting beliefs and to follow and trust their soul purpose? Or maybe yeah, trust their soul purpose. I'm saying that they're find their soul purpose now. They're kind of living it, but they might be being stopped by their own limitations. Any
Yeah.
tips?
Yeah, first you touched on it in the beginning that we all have this spark of life. And so it's really about finding that spark and the direction that it wants to go for you, even if you're in the darkness. So I like to again go back to nature and see, like, you may be in a season where your seed is buried in the dark, in the soil, right? And so your job, just like the seed, it's called heliotropism, which means it leans toward the light. Heliotropic means that it goes toward the light, and plants go toward the light. And so when
Mm-hmm.
you know that, even when you're in the darkness, or even when you feel lost, or you feel like you don't know, there is this navigation system that knows how to lean towards the light. And so finding what that is for you, and what I always tell my clients is that your desire is what helps you to go towards the light. And a lot of people are afraid of their desire because, what if I want things that are not good? Or what if I want things that change my life? What if I want things and I find out that the life that I've created, or the business I've created, isn't actually a match? And that happens. But we've got to be able to trust that desire. I say that desire is an evolutionary imperative. Desire is what helps the seed to break through the soil. Desire is what helped the single-celled organisms to become multi-celled organisms, to become animals, and eventually humans, and all of that. And so it's tapping into your desire and trusting the direction that your heart and soul want to go, and trusting your curiosity, your excitement, and following that. And so I often give people the homework. It's like, sometimes that's overwhelming. And so I give people the homework to just do it for a day. Take a day, clear your schedule, and just feel, where does this impulse want to go? Does it want to go to the cafe? Does it want to go to the beach? Does it need to go for a walk in the woods? Where does it want to go? Does it want to talk to this person sitting on the bench on the side of the road? Where does this inspiration want to go? And the more that you do that in sort of low stakes experiences, like just having an adventure day, the more you do that and start to trust it and see what happens when you follow those nudges, the more you build that muscle, so that when you are asked to take the leap, or when you feel that nudge to take the leap and change your life or change your job or whatever it is, you know you have that muscle built up. So starting with low stakes, just taking a day and having an adventure for yourself, and eventually you start to trust that guidance more and more.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was amazing. And yes, I agree with you. It's like I always looked at life one step in front of the other. Just follow what makes your heart bubble with joy, and do more of that. Do more of that every day. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for showing up in this world as a radiant being of light, Leandra. And thank you for an inspiring conversation. And for you who's listening, would you like to learn more about Leandra and her transformational work? Then you'll find her contact information in the episode description. And remember, you can connect with my guests live. Every month, I go live with one of my previous guests who will teach on their topic. So make sure you sign up for the Spiritual Quest newsflash to get notified and join the next Spiritual Quest live stream masterclass for free. You'll find the link in the episode description. Thank you for joining us, and sending you much love and light from me, your host, and from Leandra, of course. Always guided by spirit. Bye.